I'm 𝐰𝐰𝐰𝐰. Welcome to 𝐵 Inspires. It's time to give your children a childhood they won't have to heal from. Good morning and welcome to Wednesday Wisdom with 𝐰𝐰𝐰𝐰. Today I was going to talk about the opportunity to really understand the voice that we have. I had an amazing guest yesterday, and he talked about how our breath is the infinite inside of us. You know, we're born with that breath, and with that breath, we make a sound. We spent a lot of time talking about how our voice carries with parenting. And one of the things that he was talking about is, you know, the discussion of when parents are arguing or the voices are raising, and the role modeling that we're giving the kids when they're solving their own conflict as well. And how we teach them that as we raise our voice, it gets a different reaction, just as if we don't have a voice. You know, if we are teaching our kids to have a voice, what does that mean to them? It's more than just the tonality. It's teaching them to have a voice to speak up for what's right for them. It's teaching them to maintain, like, when is the right time to have that voice? You know, we used to say a lot, like, use your inside voice. You know, what does that mean? What is an inside voice versus an outside voice, right? You know, outside we hear these kids laughing and playing and yelling. And then when they come inside and they're doing the same thing, it echoes inside. A lot's going on inside and just cause a lot of chaos and commotion. So we've always, you know, in the past, like I would always tell my kids, use your inside voice. We hear teachers saying it the same way. And it still comes to that voice. Like, what is the voice and the tonality that we're using? You know, it's not like we're born and we're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to start yelling at my kids, and that's how I'm going to get them to listen to me. However, when we are raised with someone that's yelling and raising their voice, what happens? We're triggered that I listened to my mom when she yelled at me because I didn't want to get yelled at. I didn't want to get in trouble. So in turn, we grow up thinking that that's what we need to do. We need to raise our voice in order to be heard. Another thing is that, like, why else we raise our voice is because we want sometimes the inflection on it. And one of the things that Dr. Voice was talking about on my show was that the tonality can be just a single instrument, like he's used like a baritone, right? It's like a very monotone. But what if our voice was more colorful? How do we get our voice to be a full orchestra where there's highs and lows? And he even gave this exercise is, you know, you take a deep breath in, it's in, and then you talk as you release that breath, and you hear the richness. He says, feel your voice, hear your voice. And it was interesting because when he's like, listen to your own voice, I was thinking, sometimes when I listen to my own recordings, I'm like, do I really sound like that? But that's not what he's talking about. When we take that breath and we talk into that breath as we release it, and we really hear the words that we're saying when we're talking, the impact that we can have when we're feeling it ourselves. Imagine what other people are feeling if we're already feeling that, our words, our voice. And it was so interesting to think about that we are born. That's the first thing that we know, that we're alive. We take that breath and we let out this big scream as a child. So we know that we're alive, that we like, our breath is our life. And then how do we know when our life is over? When we take that last breath. It all comes to the breath. And our tonality and our voice range also comes from the breath. So when we're talking to our children and we're using that specific tonality, it's to be mindful of what are we demonstrating to our children as the right tonality to listen, to feel what we're saying, versus constantly yell at them to get it done. But we sit and we talk to them. We show up for them. Like my guest said last week, Carlina Bear, she was saying, you know, we just need to show up for our kids and stop rewarding and giving them consequences and just show up for them. I think in turn with that, we play with the voice that we use with our children, the tonality that comes out in us towards our children, because then they start to mock it too. And I even used that example. And what I was talking about in the beginning of this was about, if two people argue, like, so if I'm arguing with my husband and the kids know that we love each other, the kids know that we resolve things, but they hear us maybe arguing, we raise our voice. And then all of a sudden we hear them arguing and raising their voice to solve their conflict. Where did they get that? They got it from modeling, from realizing that you can love someone and argue to get conflict resolved. So it's not too late to start to change and practice. And that's what Dr. Boyce was saying, is it's a practice every day to be conscious. Like when you are, saying something to your child, take that breath in and say, it's in, and then talk into with the breath to the child. And if you notice and you watch the show, you'll hear the difference when he talks. And maybe you're even hearing it differently when I speak, and you can see the difference when I take that breath in and when I release it with my tonality of my voice. It's richer, it's felt differently. So we can start to reshape our children in the tonality that they use. Because how many of us say, oh, our kids have an attitude, our kids have an attitude. I know I say it a lot, but what is that attitude? A lot of time, the attitude comes from defensiveness, the feeling of I have to protect because you're blaming me, or I have to protect because you're not hearing me the way I need you to hear me. And I'm trying to defend myself. So maybe you will hear me the way I need you to hear me versus the way you want to hear me. So I'm going to say that again. They want us to hear them for the way they want us to hear us, not the way we think we want to hear them. And it all comes down to one thing, the tonality. The tonality that we share with our kids, the tonality that we share with others. It's the basis of our communication, is our voice. Again, so the voice is more than just the tonality. It's the breath of our voice. It's the having a voice to stick up for yourself and say something, and stick up for a belief you have and say something, and when you do that, and when you take that breath in and you talk in with the breath, it's also a sense of confidence that you feel inside yourself. It's almost like, yeah, I got this. It's that confidence of knowing what you're saying in that moment. It's that connection with your heart and your mind and your soul. And it all starts with the breath. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope that you got a lot from this. If not, please watch my show yesterday. He was so impactful. And you can see that on my YouTube. It's youtube.com/@𝐷NewInspires to rewatch the show. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.